The Middle Way, Lessons from the Life of the Buddha. Long ago, in the city of Kapilavastu, there was a prince named Siddhartha Gautama. From a young age, he lived in a magnificent palace, enjoying all the luxuries of royal life. Yet, he was always troubled by the true meaning of existence. Then one day, he encountered four sights: birth, aging, sickness, and death, which awakened him to the reality that no matter how wealthy one might be, suffering is inescapable. From that moment, the prince resolved to renounce everything in search of a path to liberation, for himself and all beings. Thus began the Buddha's great journey. Along the way, he faced many challenges, from extreme asceticism to the realization of the middle way. In the end, he discovered the path to true happiness. Today, let us journey through the profound stories of his life and learn the precious lessons they offer. The story of Prince Siddhartha leaving the luxurious palace. Long ago, in the city of Kapilavastu, an ancient land of India, there was a prince named Siddhartha Gautama. He was the son of King Suttadana and Queen Maya. According to Buddhist scriptures, especially the Nikaya texts and the Jataka tales, the life of Prince Siddhartha is a profound story of great renunciation and the search for liberation. At his birth, sages predicted that the prince would either become a great enlightened being or a mighty ruler. Wishing for his son to inherit the throne, King Suttadana tried to shield Siddhartha from anything that might inspire him to renounce worldly life. The king built 3 grand palaces, each suited for a different season, and surrounded the prince with luxury and comfort, ensuring that he never witnessed suffering. Prince Siddhartha grew up surrounded by the love of his parents and the admiration of his people. He mastered various disciplines, including martial arts, knowledge, and the arts, displaying exceptional intelligence. Upon reaching adulthood, he married Princess Yasodhara, and they had a son named Rahula. His life seemed perfect, yet deep inside, he felt an unfulfilled longing. One day, following royal tradition, the prince went for a chariot ride outside the palace with his charioteer, Channa. This journey changed his life forever. Along the way, he encountered 4 sights: an old man hunched over, a sick person groaning in pain, a dead body being carried to cremation, and finally, a serene monk walking with a peaceful demeanor. These sights astonished the prince. He asked Channa, "What are these? Why do people grow old, become sick, and die?" Channa replied honestly, "My prince, this is the law of life. Everyone ages, anyone can fall ill, and death is inevitable for all." Hearing this, Prince Siddhartha fell into deep contemplation. He realized that no amount of luxury or power could protect him from impermanence. The pleasures of the palace were fleeting and could not free people from suffering. But when he saw the peaceful monk, he wondered, could this be the path to liberation from suffering? From that moment, a profound determination grew within him. He resolved to leave the palace and seek the truth of life. However, he knew this would not be easy. He had aging parents, a beloved wife, a newborn son, and a kingdom that adored him. Yet, the desire to find a way to end suffering for all beings became his highest purpose. On a quiet night, as the palace slept, the prince silently left his chamber and went to the royal stables, where Channa and his horse, Kanthaka, were waiting. Before departing, he paused outside Princess Yasodhara's chamber, gazing at his wife and infant son as they lay peacefully asleep. His heart ached, but he knew that if he stayed, he would remain trapped in the endless cycle of birth and death. With unwavering resolve, the prince mounted his horse and rode away, crossing the Anoma River. Upon reaching the other side, he dismounted, cut off his long hair with a sword, removed his royal garments, and handed everything to Channa, instructing, "Take these back to my father. I am now determined to seek the path to liberation." Channa, overwhelmed with sorrow, knelt and pleaded to follow him. But the prince firmly said, "Return home and care for my father. Tell him I have not left out of hatred for my family, but because I seek a way to free all beings from suffering." With those words, Prince Siddhartha stepped into the forest, officially embarking on his spiritual journey. He renounced everything the world deemed valuable: wealth, power, and family, to pursue a greater truth. This story is recorded in many Buddhist scriptures, including the Nikaya texts and the Jataka tales. It is not just a historical account but a profound lesson for all of us. The Buddha taught that renouncing worldly pleasures does not mean rejecting life. Rather, it is about seeking a higher truth. He did not leave the palace out of discontent or escapism, but out of boundless compassion, striving to find a path to end the suffering of all beings. Even today, as we reflect on this story, We may ask ourselves, are we clinging to things that are impermanent? Is there anything in life that truly lasts? The Buddha abandoned everything to seek the truth. Can we also learn from him and let go of unnecessary attachments to find inner peace? The story of Prince Siddhartha's departure remains an invaluable lesson for all generations. He paved the path of enlightenment, not just for himself, but for all beings. Thanks to his great sacrifice, we now have the opportunity to learn and practice his teachings. The story of 6 years of austerity in the forest and the realization of the middle way. Excerpt from the Majjhima Nikaya, Middle-Length Discourses of the Buddha. 1. The journey into the deep forest. After renouncing his luxurious palace, Prince Siddhartha Gautama entered the deep forest in search of the ultimate truth. He carried nothing with him except an iron will and the determination to find a path out of suffering. At that time, India was home to many renowned spiritual teachers practicing various disciplines. The prince sought out 2 of the most distinguished masters of the era, Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta. To learn from them, he quickly mastered their meditative practices, reaching the highest states they could teach. However, he realized that despite attaining these meditative states, suffering remained, and the cycle of birth and death was not yet transcended. Like a man searching for water in a desert, he understood that this was not the true path to liberation. 2. 6 years of austerity, a harsh ordeal. With unwavering determination, he and his 5 companions, the Pancavajias, entered the forest of austerities to practice extreme asceticism. At that time, many ascetics believed that self-mortification and enduring physical pain could eliminate past karma and lead to enlightenment. He gradually reduced his food intake from 3 meals a day to 2, then to 1. Eventually, he survived on just a single sesame seed and a single grain of rice each day. His body became emaciated, reduced to skin and bones, his eyes sunken, and his complexion darkened. Throughout these years, he meditated in freezing cold and under the scorching sun, enduring severe physical torment. At one point, he attempted to hold his breath for an extended period, causing blood to rush to his head, bringing excruciating pain. While walking in meditation, his frail legs wobbled, and he collapsed multiple times. Every breath, every movement became a struggle. Yet, despite his extreme efforts, wisdom had not yet arisen, and the truth remained hidden. 3. Realizing the mistake, the lesson of the middle way. One day, in a state of utter exhaustion, he collapsed near the banks of the Neranjara River, completely drained of strength. At that moment, a childhood memory surfaced in his mind. As a young boy, he had once sat under the shade of a rose apple tree, experiencing a serene and effortless meditative state, his mind calm, his body light, and his awareness clear. It was a state of peaceful balance, without force or suffering. At that moment, he realized that self-mortification could not lead to enlightenment. If the body was too weak, the mind could not remain clear, just as a lute string, if pulled too tightly, would snap, and if too loose, would not produce sound. Only through balance and moderation could true harmony be achieved. Recognizing this truth, he decided to abandon extreme asceticism. 4. Sujata's milk porridge, restoring body and mind. At that moment, a village girl named Sujata offered him a bowl of warm, nourishing milk porridge as an offering for good fortune. Looking at the bowl, the Buddha realized that in order to attain wisdom, the body must be properly nourished. He accepted the offering and slowly ate, restoring his strength. This was not an act of abandoning his spiritual path, but an adjustment to continue his journey in a wiser way. Seeing him abandon asceticism, his 5 companions felt disappointed, believing that he had given up, and they left him. However, the prince was not discouraged. He had found the right path for himself. 5. Meditation under the Bodhi tree, the attainment of enlightenment. With a restored body and a clear mind, he traveled to the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, where he sat in deep meditation, making a solemn vow: even if my flesh and bones decay, I will not leave this place until I have found the ultimate truth. After 49 days of unwavering meditation, on the full moon night of Vesak, as the morning star appeared in the sky, he attained enlightenment and became the Buddha, the fully awakened one. Lessons from the story. Neither indulgence nor extreme asceticism leads to liberation. If one pursues sensual pleasures, they become bound by desire. If one practices excessive self-mortification, they become exhausted and lose clarity. Only the middle way, a path of balance between these 2 extremes, leads to enlightenment. To go far, one must maintain harmony in body and mind, just as a musical instrument must have the right tension to produce a beautiful sound. We must care for both body and spirit to progress on the path. Wisdom requires perseverance and the right effort. The Buddha endured many trials but never gave up. He only changed his approach to find the correct path. Conclusion. Even today, we can apply the Buddha's lesson in our lives. We should not be carried away by indulgence, nor should we impose unnecessary suffering upon ourselves. By living a balanced life and nurturing both body and mind, wisdom will naturally arise, and true happiness will follow. The story of the Buddha's 6 years of austerity is a profound teaching on the middle way, the path he illuminated for humanity. May each of us apply this wisdom in our lives, finding peace and enlightenment within ourselves. The story of Bhikkhu Sona and the lesson of the lute string. Excerpt from the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses of the Buddha. 1. Bhikkhu Sona, the disciple who practiced with excessive effort. Long ago, in a peaceful land of India, there lived a monk named Sona. He was born into a wealthy family, but with an ardent desire for spiritual awakening. He renounced everything and ordained under the guidance of the Buddha. From the very beginning of his monastic journey, Sona displayed extraordinary determination. He believed that the more hardships he endured, the sooner he would attain enlightenment. Thus, he tirelessly practiced day and night, walking barefoot on sharp stones, meditating deep in the forest without concern for his body. His feet bled, his body was tormented by pain, yet he resolutely refused to rest. Despite his intense efforts, his mind was not at peace, and enlightenment seemed distant. The harder he tried, the more restless his mind became, and the more exhausted his body felt. Over time, Sona grew weary and disheartened. Eventually, he thought that perhaps he lacked the capacity for spiritual practice and that it might be better for him to abandon monastic life and return to lay life. 2. The Buddha's teaching on the lute string. Seeing clearly what was in Sona's mind, the Buddha approached him and asked, "Sona, before becoming a monk, did you ever play the lute?" With deep reverence, Sona replied, "Yes, Blessed One, I did. And what happens if the strings of the lute are too tight?" The Buddha asked further, "Blessed One, if the strings are too tight, they will break. And what happens if the strings are too loose?" The Buddha smiled. "Blessed One, if the strings are too loose, they will not produce sound." At that moment, the Buddha gently taught, "Likewise, Sona, in spiritual practice, if one is too lax, they will fall into laziness and make no progress. But if one engages in extreme austerities, exhausting the body and disturbing the mind, they will not attain enlightenment either. Only by following the middle way, balancing effort and rest, can a practitioner achieve the highest goal." 3. Sona realizes his mistake and attains enlightenment. Hearing the Buddha's words, Sona awakened as if emerging from a long dream. He realized that he had been following an extreme path, torturing his body without gaining any real benefit. He resolved to change his approach to practice. From then on, Sona no longer forced himself into unnecessary hardship. He remained diligent in meditation but also allowed himself proper rest, maintaining a peaceful mind. As a result, his mind became clearer, and his concentration deepened. Not long after, through balanced and determined effort, Bhikkhu Sona attained the state of arahantship, bringing an end to all suffering and achieving complete liberation. 4. Lessons from the story. Practice requires balance and should not be extreme. If we are too lax, we will easily be drawn into sensual indulgence. If we are too ascetic, both body and mind will become exhausted, making it impossible to gain wisdom. The middle way is the most reasonable path. Diligence does not mean self-mortification. Making effort in practice is good, but if that effort is blind and lacks self-awareness, it becomes meaningless. Wisdom and proper perseverance lead to enlightenment. Bhikkhu Sona had the wisdom to recognize his mistake and the perseverance to adjust his practice, ultimately attaining liberation. Conclusion. In life, many of us resemble Bhikkhu Sona. We are either too lazy or too harsh on ourselves. If we follow the Buddha's teachings and learn to adjust our way of living, keeping our minds at peace, neither too tense nor too loose, we will find inner tranquility and spiritual progress. The story of Bhikkhu Sona and the lesson of the lute string is a profound reminder. Diligence must be applied correctly. Only by maintaining balance can wisdom arise, and the path to liberation open before us. The story of the Buddha advising the bhikkhus not to indulge in sensual pleasures. Excerpt from the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha. 1. The bhikkhus who indulged in sensual pleasures. Long ago, while the Blessed One was dwelling in a tranquil forest, there were some young monks in the Sangha who, despite having renounced the household life, still clung to worldly attachments. Though they wore the monastic robes, their minds had not completely let go of sensual desires. They often sought comfort and luxury, preferring a leisurely life rather than engaging in diligent meditation. When going for alms, they chose places where they could receive the most delicious food. When staying at the monastery, they sought out soft and comfortable places. Neglecting their practice of diligence, they believed that since they had already ordained, merely living peacefully and refraining from wrongdoing was sufficient. Such indulgent actions gradually weakened their determination to practice. Unaware of the dangers, they did not realize that even the smallest indulgence in sensual pleasures was like a spark. If left unchecked, it could ignite into a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. 2. The Buddha's reproach and the teaching on the fire of desire. One day, the Buddha, seeing the situation clearly, called those bhikkhus to him and gently asked, "Monks, what does it mean to renounce the world?" The monks replied in unison, "Blessed One, renouncing the world means leaving behind worldly life and living a life of purity to seek liberation." If that is so, why are you still indulging in sensual pleasures? Do you not understand that sensual pleasures are like a blazing fire? The monks remained silent, unable to respond. The Buddha then compassionately taught, "Monks, even a small flame can burn down an entire forest. Likewise, even the slightest indulgence in sensual pleasures can consume your wisdom and virtue. If you are not careful, you will fall back into worldly life and never attain liberation. Do not think that indulging in a little pleasure is harmless. Sensual desires are like a traveler drinking seawater. The more he drinks, the thirstier he becomes. The more one indulges, the more insatiable the craving. If you do not awaken, these desires will bind you to the cycle of birth and death, preventing you from ever escaping it. 3. Practicing the middle way to overcome sensual pleasures. After warning the monks about the dangers of sensual pleasures, the Buddha then taught the correct path. Some, fearing sensual pleasures, go to the extreme of self-mortification, torturing their bodies in hopes of attaining liberation. But excessive austerity is like a lute string that is too tight, it will snap. Others, indulging in pleasures, are like a lute string that is too loose, it will produce no sound. Both of these paths are wrong. Only the middle way is the right path. The middle way is the path of mindfulness, neither indulgent in pleasure nor excessively austere. One who follows this path will cultivate wisdom, find inner peace, and ultimately attain true liberation. 4. The bhikkhus awaken. Hearing the Buddha's words, the young monks felt as if they had awakened from a long dream. They reflected on themselves and realized that they had been careless, allowing their minds to be consumed by indulgence, forgetting the noble purpose of their ordination. From that moment on, they vowed to change, practicing with greater diligence. They no longer sought comfort in sensual pleasures but instead dedicated themselves to meditation, moral discipline, and wisdom. As a result, not long after, many of them attained high levels of spiritual realization. 5. Lessons from the story. Even small indulgences in sensual pleasures can burn away the effort of spiritual practice. Just as a small flame can destroy an entire forest, unchecked indulgence in pleasures can cause a practitioner to lose their aspiration for liberation. Do not let the mind become careless. When the mind leans toward sensual pleasures, it will continuously seek more. Without mindfulness, the path of spiritual practice will drift farther away. The middle way is the correct path. One should neither fall into extreme asceticism nor indulge in pleasure. Maintaining balance and mindfulness is the way to true liberation. 6. Conclusion. The story of the Buddha advising the bhikkhus not to indulge in sensual pleasures is a profound lesson, not only for monastics but for everyone. In everyday life, if we become overly attached to pleasures, we may easily lose direction and forget our higher aspirations. May each of us cultivate mindfulness, practice moderation, and walk the middle way so that our minds remain peaceful and clear, free from the fires of desire. Conclusion. The lesson of the middle way. Looking back at the Buddha's journey, we see that he experienced both extremes, sensual indulgence and severe asceticism, before ultimately discovering the middle way. A path of balance between effort and relaxation, between discipline and the nourishment of body and mind. Today, we face similar challenges. At times, we immerse ourselves in work, neglecting our health. Other times, we indulge in pleasures and forget what truly matters. The Buddha's teaching reminds us that happiness is not found in extremes but in maintaining harmony. a balance between body and mind. Let us walk together on the path of the middle way, finding true peace in this life. Grateful for your time in listening and reflecting. If this story has brought you any meaning, keep it in your heart and spread peace to those around you. See you in the next stories. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.